Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
Stop them. An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army.
Welcome to Eradicating Programmed Ignorance, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project and broadcast on TLBTV. Today, we're going to continue a discussion we had with a very good friend of ours not too long ago, Randy Moggins from Off Planet TV, where we were discussing the actual state of the nation. What is the real state of the nation? Not what we're being told by the mainstream media, the lying media, not what we're being told by the liberals in Congress, and not even all that we're being told by the conservatives in Congress. Because for anybody who lives in the mainstream media world, you're going to find out tonight, and again, you never have to believe anything I say. I never, ever challenge you to prove me wrong. I always dare you to prove me wrong. And I can honestly tell you with bravado that this excellent talent sitting right next to me, my co-host and the who has her own show, which is Rebecca Sounds Reveille, would not sit here with that smile on her face if she knew what the information we were putting out was not well researched and we didn't know what we were talking about. So she's my checks and balances. How are you today, Rebecca?
I'm doing really well, and I'm very interested to hear all of the things that you've recently uncovered.
Well, most of this is available to, and as I stated, those who have done the digging, those who don't follow mainstream media other than to use it as a balance or to use it as this is what we're hearing on alternative media, what I like to call the true media, and this is what the mainstream media is saying. So for most of you who are tuning in and spend most of your time looking at CBS, NBC, CNN, so on and so forth, a lot of what I'm going to say tonight is going to go right up your ass sideways. But, okay, again, I never, ever challenge you to prove what we say is wrong. I dare you to. So let's go through. The first thing I'm going to do is present a couple of memes that I made up that I feel are highly appropriate to this conversation. And the first one is titled, and they're in the article that accompanies this show, or that this show is embedded in. The first meme is entitled, The Real State of the Union. And it goes like this. The FBI leadership is corrupt and politicized against the sitting president. The DOJ leadership is corrupt and politicized against the sitting president. The NSA leadership is corrupt and politicized against the sitting president. A majority of Congress is corrupt and politicized against the sitting president. A large portion of our federal court system is corrupt and politicized against the sitting president. Would someone please tell me what country this is, because it sure as hell isn't the country I was born in. Now, for anybody who even has the slightest pushback against this, again, all you have to do is look at the alternative media and look at what is called the mainstream media, and you will see two diametrically opposing points of view, all right? But the one thing they both have in common is those points I just made. So that's the first meme. All of this speaks to what I like to call the truth. The sad part of this entire scenario is that the truth is not so easily recognized in what we call America today. We live under a constant state of propaganda. Harkens back memories of anybody who's done research, because most of us aren't old enough to remember this, would be Mussolini's fascist state in Italy, and Hitler's fascist state in Germany, and Stalin's communist state in Russia, or the USSR. All has to do with truth. Because if you tell a lie often enough, and you make the lie big enough, eventually it becomes the truth. So here's the second meme, and it goes like this. Truth remains the truth, even if no one believes it. A lie remains a lie, even if everyone believes it. Today in America, far too many would rather believe the comfortable lie than the uncomfortable truth. America is in trouble. It's time to wake up to the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you. So, those are my opening points, and what do you say, Rebecca?
I think we have to take this in sort of chunks because there's a lot of information to share and digest here. So I think we should start with the very first meme that you have and go from there.
Okay, I have also a list, and on this list I have some names, and those names are Robert Mueller, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Strizak, Lisa Page, the Russia spy and or FBI lackey Carter Page, House Intel Committee, Mr. Schiff, who is the senior Democratic member on that committee, House Intel Committee, Nunes, DOJ Inspector General Horowitz, the number 2 man at the Department of Justice, which is Rod Rosenstein, and of course the Attorney General, who is Jeff Sessions. All right, now these are the people, these are the main players. This is where we see so much of the controversy. Let me start out with, why do I say controversy? I say controversy because we saw the release of the Nunes memo several days ago. This was a 4-page memo that detailed specific points of corruption, a lot of it centering on the FISA, okay? Which is where the intel individuals, such as the NSA or such as the FBI, go to get a warrant to spy on what are supposed to be foreigners. But at that point, there can also be the same type of spying on Americans if they are believed to be involved with foreigners, say colluding with Russians, right? This was a 4-page memo. Now, let's talk about the truth, okay? This memo was heralded, and just about anybody, especially in the mainstream media, will see what I'm about to say. It was heralded by the Democrats as being a threat to national security. It was heralded as if this came out, it would compromise methods and sources of intelligence gathering. It was stated this would do irreparable damage to the intel community in the United States, and that this was a huge issue that had to be avoided. They put up an immense amount of pressure on Congress and the president not to publish this.
They did.
Right. But when it came out, there was no compromise of methods or sources. It didn't exist. So this was basically a fabricated lie to turn the American public off and have us to believe that this would do grave damage to national security. We all found out it did no damage to national security at all. What it did was point out a bunch of corrupt Democrats from the Obama era that are now what we call the deep state. These are people embedded from the 8 years of Obama who are basically his lackeys or his minions. So we found out that by releasing this memo, it didn't cause a national security crisis. It never would have, not going to.
Okay, point number 1.
Okay. Now, there's a 10-page memo, 10-page, that Mr. Schiff, okay, and I got to tell you something, every time he talks, the ship hits the fan. But let's talk about his memo, okay? It went to Trump for release, and Trump stated he would release this, all right? But when it got to Trump, this was not a 4-page memo. This was a 10-page memo that included all kinds of sources and methods, which, of course, the president is not going to declassify, and he sent it back, and he said, you need to modify or redact this, then send it back to me, and I'll declassify it and allow the public to see it. And word leaks out, all right? Now, you've got to understand that Schiff and Nunes both are the two senior people, the Democrat and the Republican, on the House Intel Committee, all right? There was no problem declassifying and releasing the Nunes memo, but there was a huge problem declassifying and releasing the Schiff memo. Why was there a huge problem? Again, it was full of sources and methods. These are things we can't get out. I spent over 3 decades working for this government, the Department of Defense. I carried a very high security clearance for a very long period of time. I'm aware of sources and methods. I'm aware of what you can and can't say. To this day, there are things I still can't say. So we've got this 10-page memo, but yet we do know that Schiff was well aware of what was in, of course, the entire public of the United States was aware of what was in the Nunes memo. So how do you figure it comes about that a 10-page memo, which is chock full of sources and methods, goes to the president to be declassified? Let me explain that to you. What the Democrats are looking for here is not a rebuttal, because what was put out in the Nunes memo was not hearsay. It was all based on provable fact. Now, Schiff and the Democrats are well aware of this. They're well aware that this memo is full of provable facts, all right? So how do you rally against a memo like that? Well, the first thing you have to do is people like the president and people like Nunes and his committee, or the Republicans on his committee, they have to be delegitimized. How do you do that? You send a memo to the president that you know for a fact he cannot release, all right? And you know for a fact that he's going to send it back to you, and what do? The first thing you do is you stand up in front of all of America and you say he would release the Republican memo, but he won't release the Democratic memo. Now,
so hold on right there. Do you think that was a strategy or a ploy or a tactic used specifically to sort of butt heads between the two parties then? Because
I think
he knew that that isn't something that should be released. However, with the caveat that in the past presidency, we were really much more open about things that should have been covert and that should have never been disclosed to foreign soil.
leaks, yes.
So,
Yes. Do I think? No, I know it to be a fact. And how do I know it to be a fact that this was an intentional ploy, okay, to discredit both the president and the Republicans on the House Intel Committee? Because it came back just several hours after it got to the president. Of course, he looked at it and said, I can't release this. It contains methods and sources. It needs to either be redacted or something has to be modified in that and sent back to me. Not the content, but the sources and methods. Again, as I said, as soon as it went back to the House, they got on the loudspeakers and told the world that the president was being totally unfair. There were two standards, except that Mr. Nunes, okay, Congressman Nunes, got on TV, Fox News, and basically stated, as soon as that memo came back, if I were those Democrats, what I would have done is I would have grabbed that memo and I would have redacted it and I would have sent it back without the sources and methods for immediate release.
end of story.
They didn't even touch it. They didn't look at it. They didn't put a committee together to go down and change it. They didn't do anything. They got what they wanted. Now, what do I mean what they wanted? They got the discreditation in the eyes of the majority of people who thrive on the mainstream media, the CNNs, the MSNs, MSNBCs, the CBSs, the ABCs. They literally got what they wanted, except, okay, they never even made an attempt for at least 24 hours, and I don't know what's happened since then, to do anything. If that memo was that important to me, I would have had my staff and the individuals who constructed or authored this memo down there making those changes, and within 2 to 3 hours I had back on the president's desk. There is absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, as it stands, the Democratic memo is not being released. Our president has decided to keep that confidential. So, I mean, we can hypothesize all we want on that they didn't change it, that they added to it, yada, yada, yada. But do you think in the overall scheme that if you point enough false accusations, as you've said in the beginning of the show, that the lie to the public eventually becomes the truth? So enough different types of defamatory comments, enough types of sort of taking things out of context or making implications that are not there to broaden and hone in on one person destabilizes their credibility.
Well, if you ask me, and again, this is an unfair question for me because you know how much research I do on a daily basis, okay? And it's not just alternative media, it's also mainstream media. Again, I need to know what they're saying just as much as I need to know what the other side is saying. So let's put a couple of things into context, all right? We know for a fact that Comey lied to Congress. He lied to Congress when he stated that the decision to not indict Hillary Clinton was made after, and he said this right in front of Congress, everybody's seen this, okay, was made after she had been interviewed and other key witnesses had been interviewed. Except that we also know that there was there was information put out clearly showing that the speech that he was going to give, letting her off the hook, was written 2 months before he ever interviewed her.
Okay.
We also know that, say, Carter Page. Carter Page was used as the impetus for spying on the Trump campaign because he was a volunteer working for the Trump campaign. All right.
Okay.
They basically said that he had connections with Russia. All right. And these connections with Russia were what was used along with the solicit dossier on Trump to get the FISA memo. All right. Now, once they had the ability, the FISA warrant to spy, anybody, and they're spying on Carter Page, but anybody he gets in contact with at that point in time becomes part of their realm. Well, gee, he's part of the Trump campaign. So he sends what? Emails to Trump. He sends emails to everybody in the Trump campaign. This now gives this FISA warrant the scope to spy on the entire Trump campaign. But what most people don't understand, and this is a critical part of this, and this was not available when we had the discussion with Randy, was that Carter Page was being used by the FBI, okay, to run a sting operation on Russian operatives. Carter Page, long before this happened, was an FBI lackey. Well, all of a sudden we've got Carter Page. They're taking this information to the FISA judge saying that he's a Russian spy because he has contact with the Russians, and they can show the FISA judge this contact with the Russians. But did they tell this FISA judge and again, here's where we get into the lies. Here's where we get into the criminality. Did they tell that judge that he was in fact, or had in fact, been a lackey for the FBI doing their bidding in this situation with Russia? I would bet you dimes to donuts they had not, because if they had, there would have been no credibility to their request to basically state that he's a Russian agent.
But let's go back before that, because think of how many people in the campaign have been accused of colluding with the Russians. And then when one specific individual, they find that in fact there is no evidentiary value in, then they move on to the next person.
Not only that, but you've got to consider one of the people who was indicted, okay, was General Flynn. General Flynn was basically set up, okay? He was put into a situation where he felt he was just going to go down and talk to a couple of FBI guys, wasn't aware that he was going to be interviewed, wasn't aware that this was going to be a matter of record, and wasn't aware that if he misspoke, he could be held accountable and charges would be pressed against him, as were, okay? Now, you need to understand that he never committed a crime. He never committed a crime with the information and the discussions he was having with the Russians, because he was at that time part of a Trump transition team. It is not illegal for an incoming presidential team to have discussions with foreign powers. They need to set up a basis so that once they get into the White House, they have a platform to work from. All right, now let's talk about collusion, because this is a point on everybody's mind, all right? There are so many people out there that are hanging on the hope that President Trump or members of his cabinet now, or those who are part of his transition team prior to him actually taking office, or even part of his campaign, were colluding. Let me explain something to you. It is not against the law to collude. It may not be a good thing. People might not smile upon you, but in the context, this was done by Carter Page, supposedly, by General Flynn, supposedly, and by anybody else, supposedly. These may not have been the most, I don't know, intelligent things to do, but they are not illegal. The entire case against Trump with the special counsel, okay, is based on no illegalities. Now, in order to set up a special counsel, you need to have a crime. I dare anybody watching this, I don't challenge you, I dare anybody watching you this to respond to the article here, put in our comments what crime Trump committed, because it has been admitted by both the Republicans and the Democrats there was no crime to base the special counsel on, which makes the entire special counsel that Mueller is running illegitimate.
So, and the question then is, what's the point? And so, if you look at this as a whole,
yep.
Yes, if you look at this as a whole, they're not only attacking, I mean, going after, on this particular issue, individual by individual, but if they cannot find something in that arena, then let's find something on another individual. And it's like they're trying to take down the house of cards by just really jamming people's characters, or really taking things and blowing them completely out of proportion, or making accusations that are not proven. And then if that doesn't work, like we've now heard that the president's son, his wife and a couple of individuals ended up in the hospital with another issue in reference to a letter that was received with a white powder substance and them feeling ill. And this isn't the first instance. This has happened before to other members. So it is as if people are taking every aim and every instance to take down the house of cards. And so here's the thing, though. And we think about the shoe on the other foot, and that just happened. We spent 8 years of it with the shoe on the other foot. And did you see anything in comparison to this when there was much more evidence on things that were happening within the whole structure in comparison to what's happening now?
There is an entire list that was published about 10 months ago of individuals, and it was completely blown away because nobody figured it had any basis. An entire list was published of all of the people that Obama and his administration illegally spied upon using FISA warrants or not using FISA warrants. But let's put this into perspective, because you made a great point. Why is this happening? Why are they so adamant to bring Trump down? We're coming up on an election this year, okay? And you're going to see some senators replaced, and you're going to see House members replaced, okay? What we're looking at is a Democratic Party that is absolutely hell-bent on reclaiming both the House and the Senate. Now, in order to do that, they have to totally discredit Trump and the Republican Party. So let's look at who the key players are, okay? Let's look at Strizak. Let's look at his lover, Page. Let's look at all of these people that are associated with the FBI and the DOJ, all right? Who do they have ties to? First off, they're all Democrats. Second off, they all have ties in one fashion or another to Hillary Clinton or the Democratic Party, all right? This is not a guess, all right? You have a director of the FBI who makes a decision to not charge Hillary Clinton, who I listened to his 13-minute speech where he laid out the absolute perfect reason this woman should be in prison. And at the end of it, he said, because we don't believe she intended to break any law, we can't see any reason to press any charges. That is insanity beyond belief. But, okay, if we show me one person on that list of characters, okay, and just to refresh everybody's memory, let's go over that list of characters one more time, okay? Robert Mueller, okay, ties to Hillary Clinton. Comey, ties to Hillary Clinton. Andrew McCabe, ties to Hillary Clinton. Strizak, ties to Hillary Clinton. Lisa Page, ties to Hillary Clinton, openly stated in their emails back and forth, okay, and their text messages, all right? Carter Page was a lackey, all right? He was used. No ties to Clinton at this point, okay? House Intel Committee, Schiff, ties to Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. Nunes, all right, on the other side fighting for his life and to prove all of this has gone wrong. Horowitz is the DOJ IG, and I'm going to tell you something. If I have any faith in this guy, and I actually do, when the IG report comes out, the Inspector General's report comes out, Mr. Horowitz, that will be the second bomb dropped on the American people. Rod Rosenstein, okay? What the hell is this guy doing? All right? He signed the extension on the FISA memo after Trump was elected. He was working for Trump, and he signed an extension of their ability to spy on him. Jeff Sessions, this is the guy who's supposed to be running the Department of Justice. What has he done? What has he done? He recused himself mere days after he was appointed and has done absolutely nothing. We see the criminality in many things that Clinton and the DNC have done. We see criminality in many things that Comey has done. We see criminality, it's blatant in what Andrew McCabe has done. We see criminality in all of these people. Yet we have an attorney general, okay, and an assistant attorney general who are sitting on their butt doing absolutely nothing.
Well,
You have it being reaped across the FBI and the DOJ right now. Why isn't it happening? Please tell me.
it's smoke and mirrors, because what's happening is that the Trump administration is exposing all of the crimes that have happened in the last administration.
Exactly. This is the impetus for all of this, okay? That was speaking point 2. Speaking point 1 was we have an election coming up, all right? Speaking point 2 is, and expound on that a little bit, because you've got a perfect point there.
I mean, there's really not much more to say. You create smoke and mirrors, and this is what criminal behavior is all about, because they don't want to get caught.
Well, it's misdirection, redirection, okay? If you have a mainstream media, which still a very large portion of this country depends upon, okay? They do. They depend on the NBC every night, the CBS, the ABC, the CNN. This is what they watch, all right? We have become the most propagandized and ignorant society on this planet today. That's not a guess.
Let's look at this in the terms of just interpersonal relationships, okay? And then we can look at this as a large relationship, like a marriage, if you will, of spouses of domestic violence, right? So you have something called projection. And so when one person is doing something and they don't want to get caught, they accuse the other person of that particular behavior.
Either that behavior or something as gross as that behavior. And
yes,
that's exactly
absolutely.
Absolutely. So we see collusion. There was collusion. Anybody who doesn't think there was collusion, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you there wasn't collusion. There absolutely was. Okay? But let's take a look at Mueller's investigation. We're talking about a year plus of investigation, a year plus, with how many lawyers and how many investigators on that team? He's got a literal crowd of some of the what are considered to be top lawyers and top investigators. After a year's time, and these are the most leaky people on the planet. They leak everything, okay? Not one piece of evidence has been leaked tying Trump or his campaign to any collusion. But I just got done saying there was collusion. So am I arguing against myself? Absolutely not. Where did the collusion come from? Well, I've got to tell you something. I've got another name here. Let me go back to these names. I've got another name here. Let's talk about the Senate Intel Committee, not the House Intel Committee with Schiff and Nunes. Let's talk about the Senate Intel Committee, all right? And on that committee, we have Mark Warner and Richard Burr. This is the Senate Intel Committee. They are so compromised today. They leak so badly that the FBI, the DOJ, and the Congress Intel Committee, the Congressional Intel Committee, will not share information with them.
I'm sorry, did you say...
They're isolated.
I'm sorry, Roger, but did you say leak or reek?
That's a real good point. And you know what? I think they both apply. But what we've got here, okay, is leaks that have come out of the Senate Intel Committee, leaks that have come out of the Congressional Intel Committee, of which Nunes has literally accused, Gowdy has literally accused, and other Democrats, or excuse me, Republicans on the House Intel Committee have literally accused Schiff of getting up during meetings, leaving the room, coming back, sitting down, rejoining the meetings or the hearings, and before they ever complete the meeting or the hearing and walk out, it's already being broadcast on CNN. Okay?
Well, doesn't this sound familiar? All of these things that are happening as an extension of the underpinnings of the last administration.
Oh, it all is. And this is where we get to the point of collusion, okay? Now we have to talk about why I said there definitely was collusion, okay? The DNC colluded with this guy over in Great Britain who used to be part of MI6. And who did he get his information from? Money was funneled to him, and he took that money and he funneled it to the Russians, which puts the DNC and Hillary Clinton in collusion with the Russians, okay? If you stop and consider that for even a second. Now, I'm also going to tell you, and I've got to go back here for a second, I'm also going to tell you that Mark Warner has been accused of colluding with the Russians. He, through a Russian oligarch, was trying to get in touch with the person who put together these the Trump dossier. All right, let's stop and think about that for a second, okay? Again, the first thing everybody says when you say, okay, we've got a senator that was trying to get in touch with this guy who put together the Russian dossier, and through using a Russian oligarch to get to him. All right, that's Russian collusion. What I'm telling you, and what everybody needs to know, is this is not illegal. And why the hell it is being blown way out of proportion and being used as a means to discredit Trump is absolutely insane. But there was no Russian collusion from the Trump group. None whatsoever, with one small exception, and that was not collusion because there were actual witnesses there. That's when Trump's son got together with this female Russian lawyer at Trump Tower because she supposedly was going to deliver some dirt, okay, on Hillary Clinton, when all she talked about was getting sanctions and a specific law that disallowed Americans from adopting Russian children, okay, changed, getting the law changed. They never even talked about Hillary Clinton. So, again, does it look bad? Yes, but hold on. Does it look bad? Yes, it does. But is it illegal? No, it isn't. All right? Was that senator, okay, from the Democratic senator from the Senate Intel Committee going through this Russian oligarch trying to get information, was that collusion? Yes, it was. Was it illegal? No, it wasn't. But yet, if they do it, it's fine. But if Trump never did it, he's being accused of treason and colluding with the Russians, and after a year, there's absolutely zero proof. Do you think for 1 second, if they had any proof at all, any proof, the Mueller crew, that wouldn't have been leaked out a hell of a long time ago?
Well, and let's think about things in the past, in history, and selling arms to another country.
Yeah, let's talk about selling arms to another country. There is a president in this country, okay, who not only gave millions, billions of dollars to a known enemy of the United States, all right, but was fully aware at the time that one of their surrogates, all right, who is a terrorist organization, was selling drugs and arms in the United States, and it was overlooked so that this guy could get a deal with the Iranians and he could leave with a big feather in his cap. All right. Not too long ago, information was published showing that that money was traced, and it has been found in the pocketbooks of these Islamic terrorist groups being used to finance terrorism and to buy weapons. Where do you think these weapons are coming from? Where do you think they're getting these weapons from? How many Americans do you think, CIA-related Americans, are selling weapons to ISIS? ISIS is a CIA construct, a Mossad and CIA construct. And 90% of the weapons they have come from or were channeled to them via the Obama administration and the CIA. Do you hear any of that?
And that's my point. So this is a smoke and mirrors. This is projection. And so really, we need to know our history. We need to know our facts. We need to pay attention to what's going on. And if we're not going to do the research, then really start looking at those who are, because this is really important. You can really ruffle, and that's such a light word, what is happening to our nation when instances such as what we've been talking about today are happening?
It goes much deeper than that. And see, what I love about you is you set me up so well. And you do it in such a fashion that you don't get to that point of ranting that I do. But what you just said, let's stop and think about that. What do we have in this country occurring right now? We have an existing deep state coup against a sitting president. We have an ongoing coup against a sitting president. This is the first time in modern history that has ever happened in this country. And why do I say we have an ongoing coup? I opened up with, we have a CIA, an FBI, an NSA, Congress, the DOJ, all sitting down, politicizing against a sitting president, okay? We have an ongoing coup in this country. We are living, believe it or not, in one of the most exciting times in American history and one of the most dangerous times in American history. We are looking at a deep state that is marshaling all of its forces to bring a sitting president down and take him out of office. Anybody who thinks this is anything less than that is an idiot. And no, I won't apologize for that because it's the absolute truth. It is. And we see this over and over again. We see it from the Nancy Pelosi's, okay? We see it from the Chuck Schumers. We see it from all of these people who get up and scream at the top of their lungs at, you can't do that. You can't release that memo. It's going to destroy the intel community. It's bad for the country. It's going to take the intel community down. It's going to it's going to show sources and all of these things, and it's going to be horrible for the country. But yet when we see the memo, none of that happened. None of it. Can we excuse everything they said for a week prior to that memo being released? Then we have them putting together a 10-page memo full of sources and methods, sending it to a president knowing full well that if he would have said, okay, I'm going to declassify it, his butt would have been in a whole lot of crap. All right, so what did he do? Exactly what he should have done. He sent it back to him and said, you need to fix this and send it back to me and I will release it. Why did they do that? You brought that up, okay? You brought that point up right at the beginning of this conversation. They did this for the sole reason of being able to say the president released the Republican memo, but he won't release the Democratic memo. You're damn right he won't release it, but then you tell me why 24 to almost 48 hours later, they hadn't even touched that memo to redact it, to fix it, to send it back to Trump, who stated, as soon as I get it back without sources and methods, I'll release it. Why didn't they do that? Why? Because they had one intention out of that memo, one intention, because their memo cannot disprove, it can't disprove what was in the Nunes memo. That's all based on fact. Fact that can be proved, okay, and shown to the American public. But this 10-page memo, it can't be released. President Trump still doesn't have this memo. He might. I don't know he does. Okay, we're talking days later. If that memo was that important, I want your opinion on this, Rebecca. Wouldn't you have gotten your team down there right now and fixed that damn thing and had it released?
Oh, it would have been corrected right away, especially if I'm demanding that somebody do something in a timely manner. I have a deadline, if you will, or an expectation of when somebody else should be done, and I'm hounding them to do that. Well, then I can't, in the same scope, decide, well, I'll get around to it.
Agreed. But now let's go back to the mainstream media, okay? When the Democrats were screaming at the top of their lungs how dangerous it would be to release this memo, all right, the entire mainstream media jumped on that bandwagon and said how irresponsible Trump would be if he released that memo and how much damage it would do to the country. We found out that was a huge lie. All right, now, Trump gets their memo full of sources and methods. Immediately looks at it and goes, I can't declassify and release this. send it back, tell them to fix it, send it back to me, and I'll release it. What did they do? Again, first thing they did is get on the mainstream media and tell the world about the double standard. They told the world about the double. Did they tell the world? I know because I checked the mainstream media. Did they tell the world why the president would not declassify it? Did the mainstream media say it couldn't be declassified because it did contain, unlike the Republican memo, it did contain sources and methods, thus it couldn't be declassified and released? No. What did the mainstream media say to all of the United States of America? Is that we have a double standard. The president released the Republican memo, but he refuses to release the Democratic memo. Not one word in there about the fact that it couldn't be released because it contained sources and methods, and that the president was giving the Democrats the chance to update it to make it releasable, at which time he would release it immediately. How much of that made it onto the mainstream media? Double zero. Quad balls. Nothing. Zero. So here's your mainstream media propaganda. Sometimes the best propaganda or the best lie is not a lie from words, it's a lie by omission. It's what you don't say that turns something into a huge lie. And this is what we're seeing. And this is only one example.
Well, I think that this is a lot for some people to digest. We've given out a ton of information here. And we've done compare and contrast. We have really hit some heavy issues that's happening in the current stream of things, and it's not going to go away. We're not looking at, even if this sort of eventually, which it won't, it'll be something that will continue on, but there's going to be more.
The United States today is closer to a civil war than we have been since the 1800s. This is not a joke. This is a fact. Okay? We are. I have read reports of militia in several states saying they are armed, they are well practiced, and they are ready. Okay? If Trump is forced out of office illegally, you will see a revolution in this country. And I must tell you something that most people will not believe, but this is a fact. This is exactly what the elitists want. You've got to remember, okay, Trump said, screw this New World Order. This is the United States. We like our sovereignty. We like being the United States. We don't want to be watered down and thrown in the pool with everybody else. The only way, okay, and this is exactly where Obama was taking us. This is exactly what Clinton would have finished off, okay? We would have been brought into a New World Order. The United States would have been turned vanilla, virtually sterile, okay? Very little power left, and this is exactly what they wanted. So now we're looking at what could possibly be the impetus for the next revolution in America. I don't think it's going to happen. Is it a possibility? Yes, it is. There are too many irons in the fire right now. So let me wrap this all up. This has all been about what do you know, or what do you think you know? Because if you are somebody who spends 95% of your time watching mainstream media and 5% of your time looking at YouTube, all right, a lot of what has been presented to you today, which is old news to people like Rebecca and I, a lot of it, you weren't aware of, or you weren't aware of what was actually behind it. So I'm going to let you give your closing statement here, Rebecca. Then I'm going to take us out with one of the memes I took us in on, because this is all about truth.
The truth, like one of our show hosts, the truth will set you free. So know it, get educated, and don't always believe what you hear and these headlines. Don't just scan and make assumptions.
Agreed. All right. We're going to go out with one of the memes we came in with, because now that, and again, there is so much more that could have been said today. All we were trying to do were to give you for instances. All we were trying to do is show you the deep state coup that is actually occurring in this country. Don't take my word for it. It's an ex-CIA, ex-NSA, and ex-FBI, okay, high officials that have stated openly that what they're seeing is a coup against a sitting president from the deep state in this country. These are their words, not mine, all right? But let's go out with this meme. Truth remains the truth even if no one believes it. A lie remains a lie even if everyone believes it. Today in America, far too many would rather believe the comfortable lie than the uncomfortable truth. People, America is in trouble. It's time to wake up to the truth, whether it makes you uncomfortable or not. And with that, I want to wish everybody a great night. We want to let you all know how much we appreciate you tuning into TLBTV shows. The Liberty Beacon Project and TLBTV are in the process of doing some new things. You're going to see some changes happening. You already see some changes happening, but we do appreciate each and every one of you. This is Eradicating Programmed Ignorance, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project and broadcast on TLBTV. Please take Rebecca's advice. Please do your own research, and not here, but here and here. Because the truth is usually somewhere in the middle.